Hi, all, and welcome to a world of bookish adventures. My name is Shannon.
And I'm Amanda, and we are excited to share with you today's podcast. This week, we have something a little different for you. We are kicking off the holiday season with a special podcast. Shannon and I both decided to choose a holiday themed bookish adventure to share with you today.
And this was so hard. I have to tell you, Amanda, when we decided to do this episode, I was like, oh, this is going to be so much fun. And narrowing it down to one adventure was definitely difficult. So, we do have some different book themes and book ideas to share with you towards the end of the podcast. So, definitely stay tuned for that. But, Amanda, why don't you start this time and kick us off with your holiday bookish choice?
Okay, well, I have to be honest, this was not that hard for me. My favorite holiday book and one of my favorite books ever actually is A Christmas Carol. And I hope I don't lose people here because I'm not trying to be cliche, but honestly, it truly is one of my favorite books. I have read it every year just about since I was in sixth grade, and I'm sure I must have missed a year here and there. But when I was in sixth grade, I had a classmate whose parent had all these Charles Dickens books, and I asked if I could borrow some, and I remember A Christmas Carol was one of them. And that was when I first started reading it. So after I had borrowed the book, after that, I bought it, or I should say I was in middle school. So my parents must have bought it for me. But after that, I just started reading it every year around Christmas time. And
You
it's
know,
not, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, I think it's really cool, and you're right. I mean, A Christmas Carol, someone might be going, "Oh, really?" But I think it's really cool when we have traditions. Like in my family, we would do the Nutcracker. That was our big every year since I was in elementary school type of thing. So I think it's neat. You're kind of paying homage to your life and your history and your traditions with the bookish adventure. So I think it's a really cool idea.
Yeah, and I mean, I love Charles Dickens anyway. Like I absolutely love A Tale of Two Cities, and I think he's a wonderful author. So, A Christmas Carol is really high up there on my list. And for people who haven't read it, it is not a huge commitment. It is about 100 pages, depending on the publisher. So, that's going to depend on the size of the print and whatnot, but it's roughly 100 pages. I think once or twice I listened to it on audiobook while I was making cookies, and it's about 3 hours. So it's absolutely not a huge commitment at all. So you should definitely try it and see what is the original text, because it is beautiful. He is a brilliant writer, or was a brilliant writer. And I mean, as we all know, it is timeless. It's inspired uh, plays, it's inspired musicals, it's inspired movies. I mean, I feel like most people are at least familiar with the Muppets version of A Christmas Carol. There are at least two versions of Doctor Who episodes based on A Christmas Carol. There may be more. I have not really watched classic Who, so there may be more, but there's at least two. So I mean,
Oh,
it
I
is
feel
it is a
like
cultural, like, massive phenomenon.
right. So, okay, I just had to do, as you're talking, I did a quick Google search, and according to what they, again, I have not vetted this. This is the first thing that popped up, that there have been over 57 adaptations of A Christmas Carol from 1901 to 2019. So that's crazy to think it's been adapted that many times.
Oh, certainly. I do believe it. Because it's a huge piece of our culture at this point. It's basically been immortalized. And to read the Charles Dickens writes, he's one of the people I say paints with words. When you read what he's writing, in your mind, you're there. Like, you can easily see it, you can easily feel it. I guess if I had to make a comparison to Other writers people might know, like how Tolkien kind of paints with words and really just describes the setting and, what do things look like and feel like and sound like. That's really how he writes and sets the scene for everything. He's witty, like every so often he will, make some kind of like silly observation. And something that is comes across certainly in the movies and plays and things like that, is it's very emotional and heartfelt. We start off with like the spooky ghost story aspect with the ghost of Jacob Marley, and then towards the end he becomes, of course, like the second father to Tiny Tim. So you go through this massive redemption story here.
Which
So
I
it's
mean,
a very deeply emotional story.
you gotta love a good redemption story. You just
Of
gotta love
course.
it. And I gotta share, I love all the heartfelt things you just shared, Amanda. But for our Gen Xers out there, I don't know how I didn't know this. A Christmas Carol, they made a Smurf movie of A Christmas Carol.
Okay, did not know that.
I feel like I need to find, has anybody seen the Smurfs Christmas? I didn't even know that was a thing. So anyway, yeah. So Smurfs, Doctor Who, Disney, all sorts of adaptations. This is just, it's everywhere.
Yes. And the Muppets, of course,
And the
so, and the
Muppets. Yeah.
Muppets does have a lot of actual quotes from the book, like word for word. Not the entire movie, but the Muppets do a pretty good job of staying with the source material, I gotta say. But as far as the bookish adventure part, it does take place in London. Now, I have to be honest with our listeners and say I have not been to London yet. It's on my bucket list. It is a place I'd like to go. But I went ahead and just kind of looked up, okay, well, what would people like to know about London? So, it's a setting for not just A Christmas Carol, but many other classic books such as Peter Pan and the Sherlock Holmes stories. It's big literature setting. And we already know it's known for places like the Buckingham Palace, Big Ben, the Westminster Abbey, the London Eye. When you think of London, you kind of automatically think about those things, right?
You do. And for our those of us listening out to YouTube, I'm going to share because I was in London this summer on my European adventure. So I hit all of those places, Amanda. I got to see the big Sherlock Holmes statue that they have there. And you know what? We got to add one more amazing bookish place to that list. Paddington, which is the home of
Yeah.
Paddington Bear, which I got to go see. And I actually brought a little Paddington Bear and book back for my granddaughter. So yeah, there is so many amazing bookish places in London. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's a huge place for literature. So I also, just out of curiosity, I was like, okay, London is like such a major, hub of the world. I just happened to Google, it attracts about 30 million tourists annually. So throughout the year, you can expect to see 29 whatever million other people besides yourself, should you expect to make this a tourist destination. But what I wanted to actually talk a little bit about is, instead of the things we already know, what are things that people may not know as much about for London? So I was like, all right, what is some London trivia that maybe those of us who don't live there don't know? So, believe it or not, London is actually the smallest city in England. I did not know this. It's the capital of England, but it's actually the smallest city. So it's only 2.9 square kilometers, and is only home, like actually has like people who are residents, only about 9,000 people. Now, this is not to be confused with Greater London, which has more space and a bigger population. Those are two separate cities, but the actual capital city of London is the smallest city in England. I had no
Yeah,
idea.
and it's very walkable. When I was visiting, I didn't know this, but when I was visiting, London Pride was happening, and so the day I decided to walk over to see the parade and see the concerts that were going on, they had a majority of the streets that were closed because of the parade. So I was staying over at a hotel by Westminster Abbey, and the main parade route and where they were doing the concerts there was over by Trafalgar Square. So I had a walk, and I want to say it was maybe a 15-minute walk, and that's with me stopping for taking pictures. So maybe 15-20 minute walk to get from one side to the other. So it's a very walkable area, which makes sense because of the size of it.
Yeah, definitely. London has more foxes than it does people. There are about 10,000 foxes that call London home. So if you were to visit, it's the chances of you seeing a fox are pretty good. And I am one of those people that is probably going to die petting an animal that shouldn't be petted. So maybe I shouldn't go to London, but apparently there's lots of foxes there. The tallest building in London is called the Shard. It's 309.6 meters. So for those of us in the US, that's over 1,000 feet tall. Shannon, did you get to see the Shard?
Um, I don't know. Now it's like it doesn't ring a bell. Um, I'm Googling it real quick to see what it looks like. Yes, I did see that. Okay, I did not realize that's what that was called. Okay, very cool. I just learned something new.
Yeah, so that is apparently the tallest building, and that was constructed in 2012. And the Tower of London is home to six ravens, and the legend is that they protect the royal family. I don't know how they know it's exactly six, or if it's been the same six all along. I don't know how they can tell that, but that is. Thank you, Google, for that fun trivia. And I did not know this one, and I feel a little bit silly now, but we always talk about like, oh, Big Ben, or at least we do on the side of the that big blue wet puddle, right? Oh, blah blah blah, Big Ben. Big Ben is the name of the bell in the tower. The name of
Yes.
the tower is Elizabeth Tower. So when people are talking about Big Ben, what they're really talking about is the bell.
It
So
is. And I tell you, Amanda, that was amazing. I was only a couple blocks from that area where Big Ben is and everything like that. And they have all these statues around of people, and they have parks, and there's a lot of people out in that area, playing music. I'll put some videos up on YouTube. There was someone there with just all really cool instruments and stuff like that. But then once it gets to that, to hear Big Ben, to hear the bells, it just becomes a sea of quiet. So just imagine all these people walking around, hustle bustle talking. And then when the bells start going off, everybody just stopped and looked and listened to the bells. So it was a pretty cool experience.
it sounds like it. I'm sure it must be like mega loud being that close to it.
It was, absolutely was.
Something that I thought was really interesting, in 1814, there was a beer flood in the city of London. So in 1814, there was an accident at Moe and Co.'s Horseshoe Brewery, where a 22-foot tall wooden vat of fermenting porter burst. And this led to what is now known as the London beer flood. So there were between 580,000 and 1,470,000 liters of beer released into the streets of London, which actually caused 8 deaths. So in Florida, where I live, we get floods pretty regularly, but not of beer. We just get swamp water. So
That that's horrible and funny all at the same time. You know what I
yeah, it
mean?
was
So,
when I was reading it, I was like, oh, this is great. Up until I got to the 8 deaths part, I was like, oh, it
yes.
stopped being funny. But
Yeah, not funny anymore. No.
yeah, but the beer part was. I was like, oh, this almost sounds fun for a minute. And then I would be remiss if I left this out. There is a Charles Dickens museum. It is small and there's not a lot to it. It's his home. So you can visit the home of Charles Dickens. There are there are tours that are offered. And in the month of December, you can see live performances of A Christmas Carol. So if you are in London in December, you should get tickets to the museum and check out these live performances, or at least I would if I were there. But I thought that was really cool. So if I ever do go to London, I would absolutely love to see where he lived because I just adore his writing. So that is my hopeful bookish adventure someday where I would love to be.
Well, I think we definitely have to add it to our list. You know, we're already talking about going over to Paris to be tumbleweeds. I think it's just a short little hop over to London from there that we do because there. Oh, talk about the videos and the experiences we could have for bookish adventures from Harry Potter and going to the train station and the castles and Oxford Live. Oh my, like we could just do an entire season just in that area of the world alone.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. That was an awesome and I loved the background on it. And I think all of us listening can probably appreciate that book during the holiday time. So I think that was a great one to share.
Thank you. Well, I want to hear about your bookish adventure now.
So I was struggling because I sometimes can be very indecisive on what I wanted to share. And I went with my daughter, was in town visiting, and we took a drive over to Bryson City, North Carolina. We went through the Tail of the Dragon. So if any of our listeners know of the Tail of the Dragon, we got to do that, which was a lot of fun. And ended up in Bryson City. And while we were there, we took a train ride. And that got me. This is what I wanted to do. It was such a great experience. I knew immediately that I'm going to talk about the Polar Express.
Yes, that is a great one.
Oh, such a good
I
one.
still
So
remember when I was in third grade and my third grade teacher read that book to the class.
it's such a classic. It's an iconic classic book, such a great holiday book. And what's so really cool is now that holiday book has been turned into your own bookish adventure that you can put yourself right into the pages. So, The Polar Express was written as a fantasy children's book, and it was written by Chris Van Allsburg, and it was published in 1985. And this book has detailed illustrations, a very calm storyline. And once it was published, it quickly was considered a classic. The story itself takes place in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is the author's hometown. And the book theme was inspired. He was inspired to write this book off of memories of when he was a child, going to the different department stores in his town during the holiday times and seeing all the animatronics and the lights and all of the window displays that they have. So that influenced him so much that he took that amazing memory and made it into a book. And interesting, kind of like the same with yours, but obviously not as much. This book was adapted into a film in 2004 starring Tom Hanks and was nominated for an Oscar.
I have seen it, and while I enjoy it, I love Josh Groban, and he does the vocals for Believe. So that's my favorite part of that movie. But please continue.
So, just in case you haven't read it, the story follows a young boy who is awakened on Christmas Eve by the sounds of a train. And he's confused because there's no trains by his house. So, as he looks out his window, he is surprised to see that there is a train that's waiting for him in his front yard. So, he runs out of the house, doesn't even bother get dressed, is still in his pajamas. And he runs out of the house and he meets the conductor, who in the movie is played by Tom Hanks. And he explains that the train, which is called the Polar Express, is on a journey to the North Pole and invites the boy to come along. The boy accepts, boards the train. And once he gets on the train, he sees a bunch of other children that are on there, and they're in their pajamas as well. And they're enjoying hot chocolate and having a fun time and singing. And it's just this amazing journey. And as the train leaves, the boy quickly learns that Santa Claus is going to meet them at the end, and they're going to receive, one of them will get chosen to receive the first gift at Christmas. So, as you probably can imagine, the boy is the one who was chosen to receive the first gift. And he realizes that he can choose anything that he wants. And so he asks for a bell from one of the harnesses of the reindeers. And Santa gives him the bell and he puts it in his robe pocket, goes back on the train, and all the children watch Santa leave for the beginning of his annual deliveries. But on the way,
Wait, I just gotta
right,
say, I loved the idea of him getting the bell because
yes,
when we think about, how, I mean, I know this book was written a while ago, but when we think about like all of the huge gifts when Christmas comes around, like, oh yeah, I got my kid a Nintendo and I got my kid a PlayStation and I got my kid all these things. And this child wanted a bell because he said it was the most beautiful sound in the world. I just love
yes,
that.
yes,
That was
I
just
think so
like
too.
the child just appreciated the simple thing, the simple gift. So
And
I
I
loved
think
that
that
about the
gets,
book.
I do too. And I think that gets back to his inspiration wasn't the buying the toys from the department stores. His memory was seeing the lights and the dolls and the music and everything in the window. So I think that's a kind of a cool thing for us to remember. Sometimes, I think we lose track of what the holidays are about, and what it means to have family and friends and that sort of thing. So, on the ride back to his house, the boy realizes that he has lost the bell. There was a hole in his pocket, which he did not know, and it's gone. And he is just so broken up and so sad that he did not get to bring this wonderful memory, like you said, Amanda, this beautiful sound, this bell, back to his house. So the train brings him back home. He goes back to the house. And then the next morning, as they're opening presents with his family, the boy's sister sees a very small package underneath the tree with his name on it. And the boy quickly opens it up and realizes inside the package is the bell that Santa found for him and brought back, which I just get chills. I just think that's really cool.
Uh, the perfect happy ending.
It is. And so the boy obviously is very excited, starts ringing the bell because he, like you said, Amanda, he loves this beautiful sound. He wants his sister to hear the sound. The two of them are just in awe at how beautiful the sound is. And then their parents are sad that they think the bell is broken because the parents can't hear the bell. And it was interesting, kind of that whole idea of, what is Christmas about? What is it not about? The joy, that innocence, and the fact that the children could hear the sound of the bell, but the parents couldn't hear the sound of the bell. So I thought that was kind of cool. The book ends with this final line. At one time, most of my friends could hear the bell, but as years passed, it fell silent for all of them. Even Sarah, his sister, found one Christmas that she could no longer hear the sweet sound of the bell. Though I've grown old, the bell still rings for me as it does for all who truly believe.
Life takes its toll on most of us. How, we grow up and, things can take our attention and, rob us of these things that are important to us. And he held on to that. He made that choice to hold on to what was important to him. And I know I'm overanalyzing a children's book a little bit, but that's kind of what that says to me there.
No, I would 100% agree with that statement. And where the book becomes a bookish adventure is now this has inspired real life train rides all across the United States, Canada, even in the UK. And these train rides are hosted by a number of different railways, including the Great Smoky Mountains Railroad in Bryson City, North Carolina, which is the one my daughter and I were at. And these experiences come with musical performances, hot cocoa, cookies, Christmas characters such as Santa and Mrs. Claus. Guests are invited to wear their pajamas to the event so they could fully submerge themselves in the story. And what's really cool is the train kind of goes out into the Smoky Mountains and then it goes back into this train station. And on the way back, every guest gets their own present from Santa and Mrs. Claus. So they get the first present of the season, which I think it's kind of cool how they tied all of that back into the book.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I would love that.
Oh, me too. And of course, as all things, there are different price points based on,
Of
where
course.
you are in the train. Some of the larger packages, you get free like cups and blankets and things to talk about. But regardless of what package you get or price point you get, the cookies, the music, the experiences, the gift, all of those things come with all of it. So that made me happy to realize the parts of the book are for everybody. And it's just kind of all the extras that you get if you get a bigger package.
Well, that's good to know. I don't have any kids or anything, but I could always just be like, yes, this is for me and my inner child.
You know what? I would have no problem. Now, I'll tell you, Amanda, my granddaughter she's 3. So I'm thinking about another year or two. This will make a great Christmas tradition to start. So
Yes.
you want to come tag along with us? I
Awesome.
figures we got the child with us, so we're good to go.
Perfect.
So that is my bookish Christmas adventure. I would love to know if any of our listeners have done the Polar Express train ride. I'd love to know what you guys thought about it. Maybe see some pictures of you guys doing it because it just sounds like a really awesome experience.
And that's a great choice of book too. Like, it stuck with me all the way from third grade. So I mean, you can't not love the Polar Express.
Exactly. And I did want to share, like I shared at the beginning, as I was starting to do research, I found some different romance holiday themed novels that were different holiday traditions. So we'll share some of them with you. There's The Royal Holiday, which I think wasn't this might have been made into a Netflix show or something. There was like the wedding date, the proposal. I remember my mom would watch this, so I don't know if that's the same Royal Holiday that they made into a Netflix movie or not, but it's by Jasmine Guillory. So there's one for you. Something called The Matzo Ball by Jean Meltzer, which kind of sounds really interesting to me. By D.L. White is The Kwanzaa Bunch, a holiday novella, and Miracles and Menorahs by Stacey Adern. So we wanted to make sure, and we'll share some other ones on our social media as well as our YouTube channel because, holidays are much more than Christmas. Now, we celebrate Christmas in my family, so that's what I chose to focus on. But we also want to acknowledge all the other traditions that go out there and the awesome books and adventures that can go along with that.
Definitely. I would love to hear about any other holiday traditions and books. And I'm always open to reading about other people's holiday traditions. I'm intrigued by this title, The Matzo Ball. I might just read it just because I want to know what it is now. Uh, but
And I think it's important. I think it's
yeah,
nice. I know as my granddaughter gets older, I love to find the different stories, for her and stuff, so she could appreciate other families' history and traditions and stuff like that. So I think it's good for all of us to know that.
definitely. Okay, listeners, we want to know, do you have any favorite holiday books that you love? Because if you do, we want to know what they are.
We do. We absolutely do. And next week, Amanda, we'll give a little sneak peek for next week. We are so excited that Amanda and I are continuing our indie author spotlight. And next week, we're going to have author Jason DeRoe, and he's going to be talking about his book, Akathar's Greatest Trick. And I wasn't an ARC reader for him. Jason, we've connected via TikTok. He has a great platform on there where he does a lot of sharing of his author journey and some of his experiences that he has. And we've connected on a couple different videos. And so when we started, choosing authors for season 1, I knew I had to reach out to him. So I am so excited for everybody to get to know him and his books.
Very cool. All right, that sounds awesome. Well, thank you everybody for being part of our podcast. We look forward to connecting with you each week, and we invite you to join us on our social media pages, as well as to make sure you like and subscribe to us on YouTube, as well as your favorite podcast platforms. And as always, you can find all of our information in our link tree.
And as Amanda shared, don't forget to share your own holiday book themes and adventures with us. Please either fill out the form in our link tree or email us directly at awobapodcast@gmail.com for a chance to have them shared on a future podcast.
Until next time, read more books.
And then go explore. Bye, everybody.